Okay, so if you've ever looked at the University of California application and felt this, like unique kind of dread, you are definitely not alone. It's a notoriously tough process, and it's just different from almost any other college application out there. So let's just dive right into this and break down exactly why it can feel so incredibly overwhelming.
Right. So, what is it about this application that just causes so much anxiety? It's really not just about your grades or test scores. The stress, it comes from a very particular set of rules and expectations that can leave even the most prepared students feeling kind of lost. Today, we're going to deconstruct those pain points one by one.
To really get a grip on this, we're going to break it all down into four key challenges. First up, we'll navigate what I call the UC gauntlet. That's the unique and super rigid structure of the application. Then, we're going to try cracking the content code to figure out what on earth they actually want to see from you. After that, we'll walk the authenticity tightrope, which is all about finding your real voice. And finally, we'll look at how to avoid the last-minute scramble that trips up so many students. So let's start with the very foundation of all the stress, the structure itself. The UC system didn't just accidentally create a tough application. It is designed to be different. This unique, really rigid format is the first major hurdle for every applicant, a real challenge I like to call the UC gauntlet. The first thing you notice about the UC application is actually what's missing. Most colleges, they want recommendation letters, they want interviews, they want those why our school essays. The UCs, they get rid of all of that. Now, you might be asking why. Well, it's a deliberate choice. With hundreds of thousands of applicants, it's their attempt to level the playing field, to create a standardized review. But the side effect is that it places this enormous amount of weight on the two things you do have, your essays and your activities list. Your entire personality, everything you are, has to shine through in just those two sections. The pressure is just immense. And speaking of pressure, this number is everything in the UC experience. 350. That is the absolute maximum number of words you get for each of your four personal insight questions, or PIQs. There is just zero room for fluff. You have to be incredibly strategic and concise to make a powerful point, and honestly, that in itself is a huge source of stress. Which brings us right to our second section, cracking the content code. With so much writing on those super short essays, the biggest question students have is, what am I even supposed to write about? What do the people reading this actually want to see? A super common mistake is treating the PIQs like you're just writing out your resume in paragraph form. Students will say things like, I was president of the club, and we did a fundraiser. That's the resume-style approach. But what the UCs are looking for is an impact-driven story. Instead of just listing what you did, you have to show what happened because of it. What changed? What did you learn? That's the huge difference between just listing an achievement and actually showing what it means. So what do they even mean by impact? It's a word that scares a lot of students because it sounds so big. But listen, impact doesn't mean you have to have, saved the world. It can be small scale. Did you take on more responsibility at home to help your family? Did you help a friend finally understand a tough math concept? Did an experience just totally change how you see things? That's impact. The real challenge is learning how to talk about the meaning behind those everyday moments. Now, before you even start writing your essays, there's a section that so many students just rush through, the activities list. But treating this like a checklist is a huge missed opportunity. Seriously, think of it as the foundation for your essays. It's the bridge between your experiences and your stories. This is where you give them the hard evidence, the hours, the roles, the specific things you accomplished that will back up all the personal growth you're going to describe in your PIQs. And this strategic thinking applies directly to how you pick your essay prompts. You have to answer 4 of these personal insight questions, but you get to choose from a list of 8. The biggest mistake people make is picking 4 prompts that all show the same thing, like 4 different examples of your leadership. The real goal is to treat it like a puzzle. You want to pick 4 different prompts that let you show 4 different sides of who you are. Maybe one is about your creativity, another about problem solving, a third on your academic passion, and a fourth about your resilience. See? It paints a much fuller picture. This leads us right into our third and maybe the most personal pain point of all, walking the authenticity tightrope. Once you know what to write about, how do you write it so it actually sounds like you? This quote, this just gets to the absolute heart of the struggle. There's so much pressure, sometimes from parents or counselors who mean well, to sound more impressive or more adult. And what happens is this often leads to over-editing, where the student's own voice just gets completely wiped away.
It gets replaced by something that sounds polished, sure, but also totally fake. And these are the specific fears that just paralyze students. You worry about sounding cliche when you write about that big sports victory. You're scared of sounding too dramatic when you talk about a challenge. And when you do have to write about a real hardship, you're not sure how to do it without just dwelling on the negative instead of focusing on how you grew from it. Finding that perfect balance is just incredibly difficult.
And finally, let's talk logistics. Because all of these other challenges, they're made 10 times worse by our fourth and final pain point, the last-minute scramble that happens every single year. The UC application is only open for you to hit submit during the month of November. That's it. So what happens? So many students wait until the very last minute, and in that crazy rush, all the careful planning just goes right out the window. They copy and paste stuff between sections, creating weird inconsistencies. They don't have time to proofread, and that leads to silly errors, and they end up submitting essays that are just weak and underdeveloped.
And this is where you can see how all these challenges are totally connected. They're not separate problems, they all feed into each other. When you're scrambling at the last minute, you don't have time to find your authentic voice. When you're rushed, you just fall back on listing your accomplishments instead of showing real impact. It becomes this domino effect where poor planning just undermines everything else you've worked on.
So, after breaking all this down, the rigid structure, the confusion over what to write, that search for an authentic voice, and the crushing pressure of the deadline, it all comes down to one final question. Knowing these are the hurdles and understanding what they're looking for, how do you cut through all that noise and anxiety to figure out what story is truly and uniquely yours to tell?